Okay, perfect. So yeah, hello, good evening. My name is Mieke and I work for IPIS, which is a non-profit research institute based in Belgium. And at IPIS, we actually research the interaction between natural resources, human rights, conflict and development, but with a particular focus on the impact on communities and especially communities affected by resource extraction in East, Central and West Africa. And as part of our work, we've also studied the impact of business initiatives to restore trust, to minimize conflict, and to overall improve positive impacts on their host communities. And in the next few minutes, I'd like to share some of the key lessons that have emerged from our research for essential things that we think are important to get right for companies, or alternatively, if they don't get it right, that actually appear to be some of the biggest hurdles in their ambitions to restore trust and build positive community relations. So first and foremost, it is really essential to invest in profoundly understanding your local context. What work are context-specific solutions. So no blueprints, no predefined checklists, not just a copy and paste of something that has worked for you in the past in another context. Initiatives really need to be in line with the actual needs of communities and need to really understand what are the root causes of potential local tensions that are there. As already beautifully set out by all the other panelists, and especially Alex, in lots of these communities surrounding extractive sites, access to land and resources is really fundamental to sustain livelihoods. And by their very existence, extractive operations block access or limit access to resources, and that often conflicts very strongly with the rights that communities feel that they have to these resources and the need for it. So, and that's also why we see so many of these conflicts with intrusion on, for instance, mining sites, people looking for livelihood opportunities, looking for resources, and then often meeting heavy-handed responses by security guards guarding these mining sites. But with a good understanding, you can offer solutions that actually work. And as one of these good examples, I'm going to take the example that also Jonathan has already introduced to you, that of the Williamson diamond mine in northern Tanzania, where as part of the settlement negotiated by LIDE, they've implemented a firewood collection project for the communities. And that was really to sort of meet this need for people, local people, to have firewood for domestic use and to have access to that, and to limit security-related incidents related to people illegally entering the site to collect firewood. So now they set up a program where people from villages surrounding the mine, one village per month, can have access to a certain part of the mine concession to collect firewood. This is really working, and this is really appreciated by local communities. What we also see in several industrial mines in Tanzania with tensions linked to their security setup is that it seems to be a very good idea to employ local and female safety marshals from the local communities, not only as a way to offer employment to these people, but also for them to liaise between the communities and the private security guards, and in that way bring the two worlds a bit together. Because that's actually what we often see and is the cause of limited understanding of context, is that communities and companies really live in two very separate, different worlds with a very limited understanding of each other. So to bridge these worlds, to improve understanding, bridging these worlds is really fundamental. And that requires super non-sexy work. It means that people from mines have to frequent the villages surrounding their mines, need to have simple human contact with people there, build relationship, execute, for instance, go and buy their daily stuff, they're doing business there, etc. So it really means, for this profound understanding, that companies need to invest in community relations as a very long-term process that often surpasses the shorter-term targets of settlements or specific initiatives, and that definitely also go beyond like the classic indicators in companies' sustainability reports. A second super essential thing to get right is do no further harm when your aim is to restore trust and minimize conflict. Prevention is really one of the best means of building trust and constructive community relations. And continued harm or new phases of harm can really be detrimental to any other initiative that you're trying to implement. Again, I'm taking you back to Tanzania, to the same diamond mine, where whilst this mine was implementing a whole suite, starting to implement a whole suite of these restorative justice community projects, including a state-of-the-art operational grievance mechanism, in November 2022, one of the walls of their tailing storage facility broke and actually flooded some of the villages north of the mine, causing widespread damage and loss in these mines, with people having really struggles to meet their basic needs due to limited livelihood opportunities, to limit access to water. So these very big impacts on these communities, combined with a bit of confusion about how the mine was going to remediate this harm, has actually reawakened feelings of distrust in this community towards the mine. At the same time, while the mine was actually restoring some of these broken trust feelings by replacing their security company, as Jonathan has mentioned, a very important step in building trust by implementing several projects. But a new incident happened, and immediately this distrust has mounted. It was very clear in interviews we did with these community members a couple of months after this dam breach that it also really impacted their vision, their perception of other initiatives of the mine. Another example also from Tanzania could be, for instance, that in the North Mara gold mine, which is a mine which has a very long and complicated history of land-based tensions and conflicts. Continued land acquisition by the mine, not adhering to the correct standards of doing that and the right procedures for doing that, obviously will only build on already existing mistrust and feelings of conflict. And so adding harm to harm is obviously not a solution if you want to build trust. As a third essential point is it's really important to translate your ambitious plans into equally ambitious actions. It is super important to be transparent about what you're offering, or what you can offer and what you cannot offer. It's really important to manage expectations and to be aware what it means when you break a promise. Yeah, because restorative justice projects offer opportunities for companies to really set new best practice examples and to build a reputation and their brand also thanks to these new initiatives. Yeah, they can really push the barrier. But often in our research, what we find is what is designed and what is announced as an ambitious plan is not experienced as such by communities. And why is that? Because of the very complicated realities of implementing these business plans. Plans, as I said, they require resources, they require time, they require a knowledge of the local context, they require the right staff with the right capacities in the right place. These things take time, these things take resources, which often cause delays, cause adaptations. That's why some of these projects also maybe start with a bit of false notes, and that again creates feeling of tensions in communities. Some of these projects do not meet expectations or have unrealistic expectations that are not managed well. All of that is not to the benefit of these projects. I could again go on the same case of the Williamson mine, where, for instance, they've really tried to set up a state-of-the-art independent grievance mechanism, including some best practices regarding support and safeguards for community mentions, including free and independent legal aid while they go through the process of their claim being handled. But then when we speak to communities, what is being offered in reality does not meet their needs, does not meet their expectations, and means that they're still feeling left very alone in this process without any support. we've also noticed some issues of really issues with expectation management, which is maybe not so unsurprisingly because this operational grievance mechanism is part of an international settlement, and in which, of course, compensation amounts were offered towards international standards. And now there's this local mechanism offering compensation towards local standards, which are a lot lower than what was offered previously. All of this is really causing huge feelings of dissatisfaction with a mechanism that sets out to do a huge task of remedying, over 5,000 people registered on the system. So it's really a mammoth task, but it's being hampered by these things. And fourth of all, it's really important for companies to realize and accept how complex it is, how complex the challenge is to regain communities' trust after periods of prolonged and widespread harm or negligence even. Trust is really fragile, as we've learned in our research, and this fragility is really a risk to long-lasting positive community relations, reconciliations, and also the experience of communities of remediation. It's very important in that matter to be aware of power dynamics that, of course, add another layer of complexity to gaining trust of communities. I'd like to conclude with maybe some things we can elaborate on further in the discussion as well, but maybe some food for thought for restorative justice as part of international settlements. What we've learned is that it's really important to allow sufficient time and sufficient budget for context-specific implementation of these projects. It's also super crucial to build in grassroots impact monitoring of your initiatives to see what is the actual impact of what has been promised and what has been set up. It's also important to build in mechanisms for continuous learning and for continuous adaptation. And so making sure that settlements allow for this flexibility, I think, is a very crucial point to offer the best possible context-specific solutions. And then, of course, very important to be aware of setting unrealistic expectations from the onset, which can also significantly influence a process. I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to discuss more in the Q&A.